around the title, "The Earth is the Lord's." Okay, the earth is the Lord's. And that little verse, if you received the invitation cards for the International Sunday, the small ones and the big ones, that's the only verse that's on the back. The earth is the Lord's, and all that is. Psalm 24, verses 1 and 2, which says in full, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it, for he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters." What an amazing thought that is, Is there anything on earth that doesn't belong to God? Can you think of anything? Is there a single amoeba that doesn't belong to God? How about the elephants? What about the trees, or the things that you can only see in a microscope? There's not a thing, and he says, the earth is the Lord and everything in it. And then, there are things that belong to God that can't feel anything. But he says, the psalmist says, all who live in it as well. And so it takes on a personal tone, because we belong. Everybody on earth, whether they know it or not, belong to God. And now, that can take a negative tone, because sometimes you think, okay, belong, what does that mean? Like we're all just a possession or something, But if you think about it, that sense of belonging is very, very special, isn't it? Yeah. Really is. If I say, well, that's my wife and that's my daughter, it sounds like a statement of fact, doesn't it? But if I say, that's my wife, and that's my girl, it sounds a little bit different. And the my, the word that we use for possession, also indicates, something very close, someone very precious. And by the way, the astonishing thing is it works both ways. See, if I say, well, that's my wife, and that's my girl, that means I'm theirs as well. And everything I have then is also theirs, which is really cool. But it becomes all the more astounding and wonderful when it applies to God. If everything on earth, including all of us, belong to God, and he can say of us, well, these are my people, in the same way, by the same token, in reverse, we can say, he's my God. He is our God. And there is a sense of possession. And in fact, the Bible does say some astounding things, like everything. I forget the exact words, but our inheritance is, if he has given us his son, how will he hold back anything? Okay? Everything is ours, together with God. Okay, and so what an amazing statement. The earth is the Lord, everything in it. Let's ponder that, reflect, cherish, dwell, revel, enjoy the idea that he is ours and we are his. The New Testament says a little bit more about that, and kind of extrapolates from God to the Son, to Jesus. And says the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. And it says he sustains all things by his powerful word. So everything, the spinning of the earth and us breathing and all that is happening right now, us carrying on life, is being sustained by his word. I think means by his command. At his orders, all things run as they are running. And Colossians 1:17 similarly says he's before all things. So he was there before anything existed. And it says in him all things hold together. Right? Things are not disintegrating or falling apart. There isn't universal chaos, because he holds all things together. He's the king. After his resurrection, he went and sat down on the throne at the right hand of the Father, and he's king over all things. Yes, for a little while, there is evil, there is chaos, limited, and it's allowed a little space. And God uses even those things to build us up and to further His plan. And never think, however, that God is somehow losing it. We use the phrase "God is in control." It's very true. He's on track with His plan. He's not late with His timetable. He's on track, and He's not negligent, and He's not unaware of the problems. He's very much in charge. He has a purpose. He makes us victors. But let us be assured, when the Bible says the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, it means He loves us. He's ours. We're His. And, He is very much in control. At the end of the Bible, in Revelation, there's another picture. And, it's in a vision that the Apostle John is having. It says, I looked, there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language. Sounds like the tube in rush hour. Sometimes you can travel on the tube in rush hour and close your eyes and hear every language, it feels like. Sometimes every language except English. It feels like that. Standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes, purity, were holding palm branches in their hands. It's a festival of peace or something going on, celebrating God. And they cried out in a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. That is Jesus. So the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. The final fulfillment of that is God in His great kingdom. Before Him, with Him, will be a multitude no one can count. Diverse, huge, every tribe, every people, every language, and relating to each other in peace and in praise. And how wonderful that will be. A day will come when people from everywhere will worship God and love each other as themselves. Okay? Completed, free from all the constraints of the devil and this world's cultures and pressures and the temptations that are lodged in our bodies, it feels like. Free from all of that, we will worship God and love each other as ourselves. And for that, God is preparing us now. So let's work with Him and, open ourselves up to all that He has planned for us and do our part in working on our own hearts and in sharing in God's work. Okay, God's good work of spreading His word and His love. And, in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, God, He speaks to us. God is speaking. As God gathers that multitude, He is speaking all the time. He speaks through us as we go and share our faith and talk. But I believe He speaks directly to every single one of the 8 billion people on earth. How does He speak to us? Well, I think He speaks to us through nature, through the conscience, through knowledge and insight, and through the Bible. Now, let's maybe just shout out at random one or two answers. How would God speak through nature to someone, anyone, maybe even someone who doesn't believe in God? Caterpillars turn into butterflies.
How you take a plant that's completely dead and then it comes back to life.
A plant that dies and comes back to life, okay? Yeah, what about conscience? How does God speak to us in our consciences? Yeah, Yuande. I like that. The inner voice that prompts you when you're kind of on the margins of doing right or wrong. Yeah, Ed.
Feeling guilty when you've done something wrong.
Feeling guilty when you've done something wrong. What about knowledge? When we're seeking knowledge, not just in the Bible, but in any area, how do we experience, maybe, this might be a more difficult one, Sarissa?
Sometimes we don't have no idea to do like in what way or which way or how to example when I something very difficult to me, I have no experiences. When we pray, God send someone like more knowledge, like more knowledgeable than me, or someone in the church help me to do. Yeah, and then I got more idea from experiences. Sometimes like we try to do something that we never do it before, challenges, and then the knowledge came.
It comes.
Yeah.
Right. You're trying to do something, and the knowledge comes through people, through prayer you mentioned. Yeah, Elisa.
Epiphanies, revelations.
Very good. Epiphanies, revelations. I'll stop. I see hands going up, and let's hold it for time's sake. Yeah, those are all really, really great answers. The Bible says in Psalm 19 that the heavens declare the glory of God. And, the Bible, that psalm goes on to say, the things that are in the sky, and by extension, in nature in general, it says they don't have any language, they don't have any speech, they don't have any voice, and it says, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. Okay, and Paul, maybe picking up on that psalm in Romans, in the early chapters, says, in creation, God has made plain. He's made plain what there is to know about himself so that people are without excuse. Okay? Have you ever noticed, I get a kick out of this. I have to admit, I really get a kick out of this. Sometimes you see people who do, just wonderfully knowledgeable presenters of shows about nature, about the universe, like Professor Brian Cox, or Sir David Attenborough, about in his many programs, and there are others as well. And I get a real kick out of how, when they're presenting it, I feel like I can literally see them struggle with trying to explain science in a cold, dispassionate way and just being unable to. There are moments when I see that, they're trying to explain something about how certain species of plants or trees or animals adapted to survive and this and that, or how, that whatever, there are clashes of ions out in the outer space, but they cannot keep it at that language. Inevitably, what they say and what comes out more naturally and with more feeling from their hearts is the sense of wonder and awe and amazement and the sense of, I don't actually know what this is all about, but it is amazing. It is just amazing. It's almost like they're contradicting themselves, On the one hand, they seem to be saying, as so much of science says, that all of this is just for the survival of whatever, life, the species, and so on. And yet, as they're speaking, it seems like what it's all about is so much more than mere survival, because, nature doesn't just survive, it thrives, It doesn't just exist and reproduce, it plays and it dances and it thrills, And sometimes they will even use the word gratitude or grateful. I feel so grateful. And I believe at those moments, maybe even before our eyes while they're on camera, God is speaking to them. God is speaking to them. Because if you think about it, if you say, I am grateful, then the question comes, to whom are you grateful? And, sometimes atheists are asked that question and they say, well, no. You can just be generally grateful without having someone, all right? But in every other interaction, that's not really possible. If you're grateful, then you're grateful ultimately to someone who has done something for you, And so at that moment, there's I think, my own little view, God is speaking, Conscience, similarly. Yes, that's right. I know for myself, so we have all had many moments in our lives when we wrestled with our consciences. I know for myself, there are some that stand out so clearly along the journey of my life, The first one that I remember was literally when I was about 6 or 7 years old, like that young. And And the incident was, we were out, myself and two of my friends were outside, they were neighbors, and we were outside our house where we lived at the time. And we were young boys, and we had gotten a hold of a box of matches, okay? And some paper or something, you know? And sure enough, we were gonna burn something, all right? So we lit the matches, and I still remember the words formed so clearly in my head. Mom said, don't play with matches. And the reason it's so clear is because that's the earliest conscious memory that I have of, I am deliberately disobeying. I am deliberately disobeying. And I remember another time when I was 14, when I was, making a decision to steal something. And I remember another time when I was 19, I knew that I didn't know the word sin, but I knew that I had desires, and I later on found out those were sinful desires, and I knew those desires were out of control, and because of what I knew in my former religion, I deliberately decided to take out time to practice meditation. And the purpose was, I am going to get a grip on those desires. And in the same afternoon that I decided to do that, I fell into the sin that I was avoiding. And I knew, I am a wrongdoer, and I can't control it. So for me, those are like loud and clear. But then there were and there are, a lot of pricks of conscience along the way. I don't have any doubt in my mind that was God speaking loud and clear to me, even though I couldn't identify him. I can look back and say, God was in my life, working on my conscience. Knowledge, this is an interesting one, but one of the things that I see more and more in the Bible is that God gives all knowledge. It comes out in different ways. In Isaiah, around chapter 29 or 28, there's a passage that tells us that when farmers use different strategies for different crops, it says, this is taught to him by his God. There are references to people who make handicrafts, skilled craftsmen. And it says they were filled with the Spirit to do these skills by God. Okay? There are references to rulers being guided by God. And one of them, for example, is in Romans 9 or 13, Romans 13. And it says that is why we should submit to them, because they're appointed by God. Okay, and in the Proverbs it tells us that the king's heart is guided by God as though it were a water course. So guidance to rule. And so what I think is, anytime we're seeking knowledge, when we're seeking knowledge, so this is how I think about it. Let's say you're in your office and you're in front of some numbers on a computer screen and you're puzzling over them. They don't make sense, and you're puzzling, and then later in the day you tell one of your colleagues, I was puzzling, and then it came to me. Okay? Or you're trying to figure out, you've got people away who are sick and or on holiday, and you have some deadlines to meet, and you're trying to figure out the solution, and you don't know and you're puzzling, and then later on you tell one of your friends, I was thinking about this, and then it struck me that if we combine these people and these people, we could get it done, Why do we say that? Why is it that the experience of learning seems to us like it's coming from the outside in? And I think without knowing it, all through our lives, God is working with people, whether they know it or not, interacting, so that when a few people become Christians, even from a very atheistic background, they're able, when they give a testimony one day, to look back and say, I realize God was with me all throughout. And what they're referring to, I would suggest includes that. And then finally, there's the Bible. I don't think that's self-explanatory. God speaks to us through most supremely through His Word, and that's ultimately what saves us, and that's why we need to bring it to people. So we have an opportunity now to take part in God's work as we think ahead about the invitation service coming up, the International Sunday. We have an opportunity to take part in the work of the Lord, who is trying to reach everybody, who wants all men to be saved, the Bible says, and to come to a knowledge of the truth. And let's be His helpers. All right, let's seek His mind, and let's do our part. And so, to that end, I have 3 tasks for us today. Okay, time is running out, so we're going to take the next 5 minutes on your own, maybe on your own with your phone or with somebody nearby you. Let's take 5 minutes to pray for family and friends and contacts that you have in your phone. All right, let's take 5 minutes, and then I've got a couple of shorter assignments for us. Let's go ahead and do that.